All right, we are digging for wisdom yet again. I wanted to talk about the game that we were at, Saxe against Wiley East. That was our game of the week for the show, and I want to talk about what you saw in that one, because that I know you were, and I can see your long lock still down to your chest there, but I know you felt like pulling them out when you're seeing turnover after turnover after turnover, 8 turnovers in the first half. And then everything evened out in the second half, except for one crucial thing, which I saw in the Byron Nelson Trinity game: discipline. The penalties that Wiley East was getting that would just extend drive for Saxe or kill their drives was enough for those 2 points. Of course, I had another question. They drove all the way down. They had like a 4th and 4 from inside the 10, and they didn't kick a field goal there. But then later on at the 20, they did kick a field goal. Had they kicked it then, they walk away with a 1-point victory. But I just, how much can a disciplined deal where the penalties come from plays that, it's not from a holding or anything like that, it's just from ridiculous stuff? How can that kill a team, especially somebody that you're in a district title match, and this is your chance to get that district title, and the bonehead mistakes, like, I don't want to call quarterback Fisher out, but he jumped off the bench to yell extra stuff to the ref. That threw another 15 on him. It's just too much for me.
Yeah, you could see in this game, and that's kind of a question I want to ask you, because from your perspective, what you felt about the atmosphere and the passion. But for me, this was the most hyped game I've been to this year.
Right.
Both sides were packed. You had bands going. You had pink out. It was colorful. It was loud. You had, really good atmosphere. And I think, and you saw a lot of pointing after plays or whatnot. It's like, there was some social media chatter on this game, going into the week, because they both really were, and you saw it from both sides as well. And you got to learn how to channel that and kind of, and these are kind of two teams that in a way haven't been there.
Right.
Saxe and Wiley East are two teams that are on the rise, are two teams that have got players who will play in college, but still as programs, you don't think of Wiley East and Saxe in the, same vein as you think of Byron Nelson and Coppell and Trinity and some of these other names. So I think there is programs where you have to, now with Saxe, they've been there a little bit. Coach Behrens has been there. Coach Behrens has had some really good runs in the last 15 years. Saxe's been kind of the king of Garland for a while now, but Wiley East, Dub East, as they like to call themselves down there, they're still learning a little bit. And I think that will come with a little bit of experience and maturity, because the coaches were doing the same thing. I don't know if you remember right at halftime where there was that controversial play where did he get out of bounds? Was there 1 second left where they could have kicked an extra point? You saw all the coaches doing that too.
Yeah.
And obviously the coaches are a reflection of the players. If the coaches aren't doing that, the players aren't doing that. But if the coaches are doing that, the players are going to do it. And those coaches are young, and they haven't tasted victory yet either, So I think it's a little bit of maturity, whereas Trinity should know better, Lord. This is a program, a culture that's been there. It's been in their family. The Line Weavers have been part of Trinity, one case or another for 3 decades. So that's a little bit of a different comparison for me, but I know what you're getting at with the discipline. So I think it was a lot of passion, a lot of fire in that game. But I'm not going to say, I think it's a systemic problem quite yet, because I think it was just a result of a very passionate game where two sides really wanted the game, and they really wanted to be the kings of 9-6A, and they knew it was on Inside High School Sports. They knew they were on the big screen. This was their chance. So I think it was more of that than anything else. But Ward, from your perspective down there, what was the atmosphere like for you? I was getting Bell Trinity vibes a little bit from that game.
Well, no, exactly. It probably would have been better, even more passionate, if the stadium was built kind of like Pennington. We had that big track, and you couldn't get to the crowd. It's super dark in the stands there. I can't really see them all that well, but yeah, it was wild down there, and they were, man. I swear, I was just thinking about you in the first half, because I'd never seen turnover after turnover like that. I've seen 8 in a game before, but not 8.5, and it was wild, and it was just the teams wanted it. And I knew it was going to be a passionate deal right from the opening coin toss, because Wiley East players refused to shake hands with Saxe at all. They put them right down by their hands like a motionless person. And I was like, oh boy, we're going to have it today. But there was definitely a fun atmosphere. Other people I want to shout out is our guy Buck Randall over there at Highland Park. Boy, we don't talk much about that district. We do talk a little bit, but not that much. Certainly not that much about Highland Park, because we felt like they were kind of the team to beat there, and now they're really showing that this Buck Randall character. I just like saying Buck Randall. He sounds like some guy that could get in a phone booth and turn into a superhero real quick. I think they're going to be a problem come the 5A playoffs like they were in the John Paul days. I just really think that's going to be a problem too. I don't know what you saw out of it, and maybe you can't read into as much as I'm reading into it because they're probably not going to have very many competitive games till we get to the end of the season after this Red Oak one. But your thoughts on Highland Park's win over there?
What about Brandon Lilly? That was a name that jumped out, and a lot of people were talking about him. We're talking about the grandson of Bob Lilly. Even your old Redskin, perspective, you got to know Bob Lilly and that kind of lineage there. This is just a fun Highland Park team. I mean, just as a team, they are a complete team from 1 to 22. Aledo is going to have the athletes on them if that's the state semifinal game, if you have an Aledo Highland Park game. But the heart that Highland Park is showing right now, again, it's almost like a cliche word. We can just throw it out there as our thing. But I believe it to be true. Randy Allen would not be coaching anymore if he thought, this is it. Like, we're just going to be a 7-3 team, and we're just going to be good, Highland Park good. He'd be done. I mean, he's done everything he's wanted to do. But every year he's looking at his team and he's getting excited. He's feeling that passion. And this team, especially, we're talking sophomores are really dominating this thing. It's really fueled his passion. The coaches are believing, the players are believing, and they're just playing a very technically sound style of football right now that's very dangerous. And if you get belief on top of the talent that they have, it's going to be a scary team. But the talent, relative to Aledo, is not the kind of college player talent. Right. It's just really, really good high school football players. But that's sometimes good enough to win. So Highland Park definitely gets a shout out. I think Midlothian, and we'll give them a little bit of a stylistic test. Will their run defense be able to stop Midlothian? But yeah, I think they've pretty much got their route to the first round of the playoffs. And Ward, you sent me a text message, and I think it's kind of important while we're talking about some of how Houston area and East Texas, but there was a Houston game of consequence as it relates to South Oak Cliff this week. Maybe you can give us a little bit of insight, because we're not going to get a chance to talk about 5A Division II this week because they are not playing. You can give us a little bit of perspective on why that was important.
Yeah, P&G took on Huntsville at Huntsville's new stadium down there, and that they're the cream of the crop of that district, although Montgomery's kind of stepped up a little bit too. They're undefeated down there and took out Lake Creek. But that game, to all the experts, is for whoever's going to win that district crown. And Huntsville took one. They kicked one off the uprights to tie the thing up. It went doink. The old doink heard around the world. That doink means that they're most likely going to get Huntsville's most likely going to get South Oak Cliff in the second round of the playoffs. Now, had that doink went the other way and they pulled something out in overtime, we could have very well seen a P&G South Oak Cliff second round game, a rematch of the state final early on in the second round. God knows where they'd play that game in a neutral site. But now, it's still going to be a tough game. They're still going to have to play a tough team in the second round. No more going through DFW and maybe throwing having these teams intimidated by them and having the Lovejoys of the world kind of fold up like a lawn chair. Now they're going to go out in the second round, play a team that's like, okay, we've heard about this team. They're not playing in their hometown. I don't know how well they're going to travel, but whether it's Huntsville or P&G, at one point we thought, man, this may be a P&G loss, and they may have to play Port Neches Groves in that second round, and that would have been something special to see that early in the postseason.
Now, why are you being disrespectful to Woodrow Wilson? Why do you just assume Woodrow Wilson is going to, not win the district? Come on, Ward. What's going on there? Now, do you consider Huntsville part of your Houston area market? So
yes, we do.
A Huntsville sock game would double interest you.
That's right. Double up. I don't know where they play, but they would double up for sure. And that would
you'd probably just do Bally's because it's not going to be in Houston or in Dallas. So you'd probably be like,
we'll have to find them somewhere. What you got for me?
We're going to negotiate here.
What you got for me, Bally's? All right, you want to throw out some flowers? I'm going to throw out a flower first before we get to yours. I'm going to throw something out to Creekview, man. A 21-game losing streak. Now they're sitting at 6-0. They had to come from behind. They did almost nothing in the first half. They needed a big man touchdown to get them sparked as one of their defensive linemen got a pick six. Quarterback throws very unconventionally down by the hip sidearm like Bernie Kosar. I don't know if y'all remember Bernie Kosar.
Brett Saberhagen.
Yeah, exactly. Or Dan Quisenberry is more like it.
There you go, Dan Quisenberry. Get some old '80s Royals talk. I only know Brett Saberhagen because you know that RBI baseball game and
Yeah.
8-bit Nintendo. Boy, you could just get that thing, and with that sidearm motion, you always get it across the plate. They can't ever hit it. That was my go-to in RBI baseball. I needed Brett Saberhagen in my
Well,
life.
DeAndre Richardson can be really good at RBI baseball because that's the way he throws the ball over there. And they're kind of like they kind of remind me. At least that game kind of reminded me of. Remember when Tim Tebow played for the Broncos? He wasn't very good. I mean, he wasn't a good quarterback, but he would win games somehow, some way. They'd beat Pittsburgh somehow, some way in the playoffs and keep going. That's how Creekview's doing it. W.T. White looked like they had the thing handled. They were up 17-7. They were driving. Somehow, some way, they came back to win, and now they're sitting there at they not only shut down their 21-game losing streak, now they put on a 6-game winning streak, and the fans are pretty excited about that. But who do you have flowers to give out to?
And that and just to talk about, remember that 17-7, it was a pick six. So I mean, they had done nothing offensively.
Nothing.
Their quarterback had a concussion or something. He was out of there very early, and now we got to try to figure this out. And man, the last couple of minutes of the game was some Tebow magic right there. But what about Fort Worth Pascal, Ward?
How about that?
I mean, to beat Chisholm Trail, I mean, that's kind of a 55-45 game. It's not a complete shock that they won that game because we talked about them at the Campfire Ward. I was very excited about them. But then Chisholm Trail did some things that kind of got me a little bit more excited about the Saginaw, Eagle Mountain ISD schools. But then Pascal put it to them. They got the belt out that everybody's been sending the emails about this week saying you can't talk about the belt. Well, they took the belt and they decided to visit Chisholm Trail, and they gave them a rough ride over there. Well, I don't know if Rough Riders is Saginaw, but it was a whooping over there. Fort Worth Pascal, flowers for you, my friends over there.
They deserve it.
In the TCU area, because I love some Fort Worth ISD. When Fort Worth ISD is doing well, I'm happy about that, and we'll kind of talk about that later on as we get into the muck and the mire of our digging for wisdom. And for me, Mansfield Legacy, the fact that 0-5, and they had played a couple of close games and just really close, but the way they beat Weatherford, man, they are in the playoff race. I put them in number 4 right now. The way they played South Grand Prairie, I kind of okay, Mansfield Legacy, I could see that. But you got to get some wins at some point. Saginaw Boswell is our king of kind of style points, but not actually winning. Well, Legacy got the style points and they got the win. I'm going to give them some flowers. And for my last set of flowers, what about Justin Northwest? I mean, man, they took LD Bell and put him out of their misery and said, LD Bell, you worry about Trinity. That's about only going to be your win because we're taking care of business. And remember, Ward, that is very consequential for Byron Nelson. It's also consequential for you as a videographer because if Justin Northwest makes the playoffs over Timber Creek, that's going to push Byron Nelson up into D1, which means that Trinity or Byron Nelson, and in this case Byron Nelson, since they've already played that game, has to play North Crowley in the first round. So I know Byron Nelson's a bigger fan of Timber Creek because then that would push Timber Creek into that North Crowley game because Byron Nelson versus North Crowley in the first round is a great game for us. It's a great game to put on TV, but not a great game if you're Byron Nelson. So I know Byron Nelson is cheering against their ISD counterparts. They want to see Timber Creek make it, but Justin Northwest starting out undefeated. Let's give them some flowers too.
Yeah, they've done what they've had to do. They've beaten all the teams they're supposed to. They had a whatever you want to call it, a 50-50 game against Eaton, and they took care of that one. They're probably going to beat Central this week. They're backloaded, and that last game that you're talking about, the Timber Creek game, which very well could be for the last spot, that will be after South Lake, Trinity, Byron Nelson. So if they can pull off one of those wins, then the Timber Creek game may not mean as much as we thought. But if they aren't too beaten down and ready for that Timber Creek game, that could be something special to see who gets in the postseason. And all the fans from Byron Nelson will be over there watching as well. Where are we going? Where are we going? So it should be interesting. Now, listen, if you got the flowers, you got to have the shovels. Who deserved a shovel this week? And we call it shovels here, not belts.
We have our first double flower shovel. So a team that we got flowers early in the year, and now just as quickly we got the shovel out there. We're done with them. Joshua, what has happened to Joshua? We
Oh
were
man.
so filled with hope. They were 4-0, but losing to Tyler and losing to Tyler non-competitively, it looks like old Joshua just kind of came back. So for me, it's hard for them to make the playoffs at this point. They're 0-2, and who are they going to beat at this point? I mean, yeah, they can beat Cleburne and Burleson Centennial, but then you got to beat Red Oak or Highland Park to get back in
Right.
the mix. And so for me, that's shovel bound when that happens. And then Birdville, we talked about Birdville versus Azle last week, and Birdville took that to heart. Birdville gave Azle everything they
They played
wanted. That
on.
was a great game, 48-43. But Azle found a way to win. They should get some flowers too, but we've given Azle their flowers. But Birdville, that makes it impossible. Because now Birdville's got to beat Alito or something, you get to flip or Ryan to flip it. That is not happening.
Not
So
gonna happen. Is it?
Birdville, sorry, Birdville.
You're gonna hit over the head with a shovel. That's the sad thing to do. Throw some dirt on them. All right, let's move on to some games here. Let's start off in 3-6A where, we almost shoveled up Crowley, but now they're right here in the thick of things. I think you have them seated second, right, or maybe just third behind Mansfield. And so
Mitch.
these two, they can easily flip it if they can pull this win off at Newsom.
Lord, what is wrong with me? Because I'm about to tell you why Crowley's going to win this game, and I've done this against Mansfield several times this year. I picked them against Waco Midway. I picked against them against Waco Midway. I picked against them against Arlington Martin, and Mansfield has made a season of proving me wrong. I'm like only 50-50 in their games because they do something like they did last week against Saginaw Boswell and only beat them by 1 point. Where I'm thinking, what is wrong with this Mansfield school? And Crowley looked incredible against Boswell this past week,
Yeah.
putting up almost 700 yards, almost 450 on the ground. This was the Crowley I was expecting all season, not the Tyler Legacy, not the Skyline game. This Crowley against Saginaw Boswell is what I was expecting out of them. If we get that version of Crowley against Mansfield, they should win that game by 1 or 2 scores. So I'm believing, Ward. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm actually drinking some unsweet tea brought to you by Sonic. Half price on the app right there. Get it, Ward. Get me a sponsorship. Give me Crowley as well to win that game. And I was very serious.
It's gonna be a shootout too.
Very, very serious.
That's gonna be a
Very
shootout game too, right? That thing very well could be in the 40s, 50s. Am I right or what? I mean, they
I don't
put up
think we're
some
gonna get to the
offense.
50s, but I'm seeing 30s. I'm seeing at least 30s.
I can get it.
But man, Ward, I think Crowley. That's my team right there.
Well, I'm thinking
And we got a
Mansfield, so
shovel
we'll
game,
see.
Ward. 3-6A. When you have a game, you got a shovel game right there.
It's a shovel
Loser, this
watch.
is done.
It's over with.
It's
Shovel
over
watch
with.
with the old Mansfield legacy. They just got a flower a second ago, and now you're saying seconds later, if they
We're
can't
going
get
back
it
to back,
together,
though. All you gotta do is look at Joshua. You just
Yeah,
go down
it's-
Highway 174, and you'll see. I give you flowers, but I'll get that shovel right behind you. I'm using the shovel to give you the flowers.
well,
So,
Boswell's trying to
it's
understand. I bet Boswell's trying to figure out how come they haven't got the shovel already. I mean, they haven't got to win the whole entire year, but they're going to wait to get to 0-7 before you say, you know what, I'm finally going to put dirt on them. You're turning them into the Lebanon Trail from a couple years ago.
3-6A is the hardest district to pick because everybody has a chance. But the loser of this one has no chance anymore because at that point you got to do something crazy. I think Boswell has been good enough to win almost all of those 7 games except for Forney. So I feel like Boswell, they play up and down to their competition. But Legacy, I feel like they figured something out. So give me Legacy, and I think that kind of locks Legacy into the 4th spot. So we will officially be done with Boswell after that. And Ward, you called it from the campfire earlier this year. You're talking about Boswell, just all their players are gone.
They're gone. They're playing at other places, but they've got to
Well,
be
they go
happy. They got to be happy they didn't get the shovel at 0-6. So they feel very Frisco Memorial like from last year.
Now we have 1-5 against
Trail.
0-6, and we're highlighting the game, Ward. That's what we do here on the Digging for Wisdom podcast. You give us 1-5 and 0-6, we'll give you a shout out. This is for a playoff spot at 1-5 versus 0-6.
That's talking about going deep into the numbers. Only my man Dish could do that. Trinity's taking on Timber Creek, and this is one of those at Timber Creek, if they can steal a win somehow, or they'd love to steal a win here and put them in a better position before that last game with Northwest. But I don't know. Is it going to be tough for them to do against Trinity because they couldn't score against Byron Nelson, but they probably could score a little bit more against Trinity. Their defense has been struggling of late.
You know, I gave a whole speech on this word of last week. I said Byron Nelson, I felt like was going to take care of the lower teams much easier than Trinity was going to have to deal with that. So this is our first chance to kind of see back to back. I think Timber Creek is going to give Trinity a heck of a game. I think it's going to be a 1-score game, but Trinity has found ways to win these games this year against inferior teams. But I don't think it's going to be the kind of game like with Byron Nelson. I think we're going to see like a 38-35, 38-31 kind of a game. But I like Euless Trinity. But Timber Creek is going to play much more competitively against Trinity, in my opinion, than they did against Byron Nelson, which is one of those curious things. How did Byron Nelson lose to Trinity? But you were there, so you know.
We all know how that happened. Decided not to kick that field goal, and that's how it went down. Tell me how my Flower Mound Jags are going to win this thing. I like the way they're trending right now. They're trending well with the Dallas Morning News. They're trending well in this area as we saw Marcus just put up an egg against Hebron. So they're in the Louisville ISD. They're trending well. Tell me how they're trending in Diggs' mind.
Man, this is one of those games where you're kind of confused about it because Flower Mound now, is looking good. They played Denton Geyer very well, and that was with turnovers. Flower Mound had all these turnovers and still was within a score of Denton Geyer. And then Louisville, Louisville barely beat this Marcus team, needed a little bit of luck to kind of get out of that Battle of the Axe game, which is a bit of a rivalry game. They looked good against Boswell, but everybody's looking good against Boswell and Little Elm right now. So this is a game all of a sudden I think you have to consider a 50-50 game. But, man, Louisville is just more talented than Flower Mound. So you're in the community. What key changes are Flower Mound going to make? What coaching to try to outcoach Louisville? What kind of schemes are we going to see Flower Mound in there to try to figure out a way to get past this big offensive line, to get past this fast physical defensive secondary, these really good linebackers, these young kids? What elements can Flower Mound figure out? I don't know. Maybe you could sell me on it. I think Louisville, for me, is a little bit of a favorite right now. But, man, the way Flower Mound is playing, how can you pick against them? You might not be able to. I can't do it.
I can't.
I don't live in the community.
I can't pick against my Flower Mound Jags, although I do like Coach Odell and them. They're going to have to rip that ball out and get turnovers on their favor. I mean, they're going to have to do it offensively. They're going to have to pick apart the defense if they can, but that's going to be difficult. But they do have their boy Noah Spinks to Carter Massey connection. You saw it live. I saw it live, and it certainly worked against Little Elm, but just about anything works against Little Elm these days. That'll be a good one. They got to get better quarterback play out of this Oklahoma guy, Kevin Speary. I don't like the way he kind of played against Capel, which they kept coming back, but I believe there's turnovers involved in that game as well. Hebron is always making you scratch your head. They scratched your head last year. They scratched your head this year. But they're starting to play a little bit better. So, and this one being at Hebron, this could be something interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the way Hebron dominated Flower Mound Marcus, and now when you look at their resume in kind of totality, got to win against Jesuit, you got to win against Lancaster, you got to win against Marcus now. I mean, Hebron's got a pretty good resume, but they also have a couple of head scratchers. Like, what's going on here with Hebron? And Denton Geyer's got the same kind of head scratcher. So this is a fascinating game. It's one I'm going to be very interested in on Friday night. I might even kind of put it on my short list of games I might want to see on Friday night. I've figured out Friday night. I got Thursday figured out, Ward, but Friday night is still open. You talked me into it, Ward. We got to go see Saginaw in Arlington.
We got to.
That's
there
what we got to do as podcasters.
Down there at Clark Stadium, we definitely got to make a road trip down there. Your boy Gossett. The Goose will be there. Who knows?
He loves that kind of game right there, and of course. It's one of those games that's nowhere near Arlington Heights or Saginaw, but it's everybody's got to travel for games. It'll be that triangle sort of game, but that's not. We're in the wrong 4 or 5. We got 4s and 5s and 6s and all kinds of stuff. Denton Geyer should win this game, but man, if Hebron plays the way they did against Lancaster and the way they did against Marcus, They can win this game.
Let's put
Geyer, like we could put up your graphic again, and just change Ryan to Geyer and talk about the curious case of Denton Geyer. It's pretty much the curious case of Denton ISD this year because Braswell lost, Denton lost. I mean, everybody in Denton ISD lost this past week. It's a bad day. Whereas in Richardson, everybody in Richardson ISD won this week. So our Joey Florence, the AD over there, he's sad, but the AD over at Richardson, she's happy, and all kinds of when you get the ISD sweeps. But give me Denton Geyer. But you're right, Kevin Sperry's got to figure this out. To me, he looked better at Prosper Rockhill than he's looking right now over the last couple of games. I don't know if he's in his head. I don't know if he's injured. I mean, that's kind of what I kind of go to, that he's playing through like a turf toe or something, because it's just not crisp. It's just not his downfield vision's not good. He ran a little bit more against Coppell. He ran effectively, but he's just not connecting with these Geyer receivers. And Geyer has too much talent to be playing the way they are right now.
He's missing his guy for sure, Corbin Glasgow, because they were a heck of a combination when they beat Alito, and he's been out for quite some time now. So it should be but he's still got enough athletes out there to find somebody. All right, let's move on to 6-6A, your district. Prosper's taking on Plano. Your thoughts on this one? Because Prosper's been really playing
great. Green Eagle, as they like to call them in Prosper. They got that big old green eagle sitting on their mascot inflatable. But Plano, talk about a team that should get some flowers. They don't have the record to really get the flowers, but Plano's looking good. And I was talking to some of the coaches who are scouting this game, and they're really impressed with Plano's infrastructure. And if you don't understand my terminology when I talk about calibration and infrastructure is offensive and defensive lines. It's just that you're big guys who you're not going to see on the stat sheet, but who really make the engine go. Prosper's got that in spades, obviously, with the 61 offensive linemen. But Plano is really good infrastructure wise. But for me, some of the questions about Plano has been their coaching, their resilience, and some of their skill kids. I have some questions there. So this is a really good chance for me because Plano played Allen within one score at one point in the second half. So I think this is going to give us a little bit of insight into Prosper versus Allen, because we'll have seen Plano against Prosper and Allen at that point. And I think for me, selfishly, it'll give us a little bit of insight into Plano versus Plano East when Plano East gets out of their bye week in a couple of weeks. They got Rockhill, then they got Plano in that game. So I'm very curious in this game. I think most people would agree that Prosper is going to win. But Ward, we like looking at the inside. That's why we're inside high school sports. We like to go inside the game. We like to go inside the numbers. So I'm looking at the style points. I'm going to see how Plano is competitive in this game. Because if Prosper hits him in the mouth and Prosper can't respond, that kind of speaks to Plano, is lacking resilience. But if Plano can stay in the game, I'm not saying they can pull an upset, but those are the kind of style points that would make me worried about the Plano East Plano game. I'm already worried about that game as it is, but this could cause me more worry because Plano now has 2 straight games against Princeton and against Plano West where they played much better than Plano East did against.
And their win against Richardson is really starting to look a lot. I mean, it would look good then. It's really looking good now because Richardson wouldn't have lost at all if they hadn't lost to them. So kudos to Plano. Let's see how that game goes. Speaking about Richardson moving into their district, Jesuits taking on Lake Highlands. Lake Highlands is moving, is on the move. They didn't play that non-district. We didn't know what we were to expect, but right now they're looking like maybe the best team in this district. What do you think about them in Jesuit?
Yeah, I still think they're the best team in the district. I think if they wouldn't have lost Christian Rhodes, they would have beat your Flower Mound team. I think that was a pivotal moment. But I really like the infrastructure of Lake Highlands, kind of like I was talking about with Plano. But man, Jesuit got their heart ripped out against Pierce. You thought that they were going to get that win against Pierce. But then second half, Pierce actually played defense. We keep talking about Pierce and being the cardiac kids where they only play a half, but the half they play, you look at them like, ooh, that 675 yards for it. It was a highlight bonanza.
I needed to pick Casa Grande for my fantasy on that one. Man,
you needed to, or Harper. Harper would have kept you in the game single-handedly with his nearly 500 yards of total offense. But Jesuit, just something looks wrong with Jesuit. We kind of talked about even going back to the campfire that I was higher on Berkner. Remember, my number one pick was Berkner in this district, and a lot of people had Jesuit as the number one. Then once the game started being played, we both fired all of them. We're like, nope. nope, those two
Yeah.
teams aren't going to make it. Let's talk about Lake Highlands and Richardson Pierce again. But this is the kind of game that Jesuit bounces back and wins because, Lake Highlands does not have a huge talent discrepancy over Jesuit. But I think Lake Highlands is a favorite, but this is one of those games where if Jesuit wins, we wouldn't be surprised. And this was the kind of stuff that happened last year when you had Jesuit, Lake Highlands, and Highland Park all kind of trading wins against each other, and then Berkner stealing a win against Lake Highlands. And you're just like, what's going on in this district? But I think Lake Highlands should take care of business in this game. But again, I feel like Jesuit's starting to figure things out. I know putting up 42 against Pierce isn't something, Wiley did that. But I think once Jesuit starts to get an offensive consistency and they start to get that confidence, maybe they'll get that Jesuit swagger back. But I haven't seen that Jesuit swagger. Like we're talking about the Highland Park swagger earlier on in our episode. I'm not seeing that out of Jesuit. But if Jesuit gets a win or two, they could be dangerous.
Yeah,
and we see it every year, it feels like with Jesuit, that they get on a run, and then all of a sudden they're in the second round of the playoffs again. We're like, how'd this happen?
What happened? What's going on? And this is probably where I feel like I'm going to wind up. I don't know for sure where I'm going to be, but it looks like this when we've talked about both Bowie and Martin. Atrocious in the non-district. They both go 0-3, but when you say they're riding their bike, what was your analogy? When they're riding a bike at the same level, they're not riding uphill. They're starting to play ball now. They're both 2-0 in district. They're starting to go downhill. They're both 2-0 in district. Everybody in this district took the bye last week, and now this one has the makings of what could be a shootout over there. Because from what I've seen, neither one of us has played the best of defense.
Yeah, but last year we kind of thought the same thing, and it was 20-19. It's one of those games. We thought Saxe and Wiley East might be a shootout. We got 19-17. Although we got, your Hagley got 200 yards, and we had lots of big plays, but then we had lots of turnovers as well. So Sometimes you get these good offenses that they get into ugly playing, and then all of a sudden got some yards, but you don't really have some points in this game. Man, I just got to believe in Arlington Martin right now. Bowie hasn't shown me anything in non-district to make me think, okay. But 2 weeks to prepare. They've both been getting healthy, getting right. But it's hard for me to pick against Arlington Martin. I think it's going to be close. I think it might require a fourth quarter come from behind win. But I trust Arlington Martin, Jesse Ford to make a big play in the fourth quarter when you need it. Maybe a big sack or something. But give me Arlington Martin in this game. But I think you would be wise to shoot this game. I think I'd go in the second half if you only get to go a half. I wouldn't go in the first half. You might be seeing what you see against Saxe, where you got to try to figure out which of these turnovers you got to package into a piece. But second half, I think you'll see some things.
I got you. All right, I might just take your advice. I usually do. 9-6-8, Naaman Forest, Lakeview Centennial. This seems like they're trying to fight for the last playoff seeds here. We already know the top two. I feel like you feel Wiley's in there at 3, but maybe they're not. Tell me who's looking at 4. Are these two teams battling out for that?
I think they're going to be battling for a shovel watch.
Shovel watch time. Oh, my goodness.
Because I got a shovel watch on this game because Naaman Forest played Wiley a lot more competitively. I mean, if you remember seeing some of the highlights that were posted up there, Wiley blew a 17-point lead and then had a walk-off field goal to win that game. So now that tells me that Wiley is closer to this pack. And now that we saw Garland beat Rowlett, I think our pack of 4 is Wiley, Naaman Forest, Lakeview Centennial, and Garland. So I think the loser of this game, at this point, they're behind. They're behind the sticks, as it were. But I believe in Lakeview Centennial. I picked them from the campfire. I picked them. I keep picking them. They've had their hardest part of their schedule. They've got Saxe. They got Wiley East out of their way. I think Lakeview Centennial now, they're on that bike going downhill, Ward, like I keep talking about in Arlington ISD. And I think now that they're looking at Naaman Forest, they're going to have a chance to thrive. So I like Lakeview Centennial in this shovel watch. But Naaman Forest, they're playing pesky football, Ward. They gave Wiley everything they wanted. And so don't count out those Forest Rangers, but I like Lakeview Centennial.
Yeah, it's nice to hear you say good stuff about Garland after that diatribe from Coach Russell.
Garland, what are you talking about?
No, I'm not saying you're down. I'm just thinking about when we interviewed Danny Russell during the summer, and it looked like all heck had broken loose, and he may find a way to get in the postseason after all. So we'll see what happens there.
He ain't making playoffs, but I mean,
you never know.
he's closer. He's closer
He's
to
closer.
that pack than he is the bottom pack down there. But
He's not sleeping on the
as you
couch
said,
in the
Rowlett,
office.
man, what did Rowlett do
Yeah.
in that game?
Jeez. I'm about done with Rowlett. Who else was I done with? I forgot who I was done with. Oh, we were done with I forget. Well, let's keep on going. Talk 10-6A. Talking about Longview and
A
Forney.
professional award. Work past your mistakes, and so, I don't know. I can't think, but we
Just
got to
keep on
talk about
moving.
what is on the run sheet right now. And
Exactly.
let's and run sheet is a good metaphor for that because Longview's
Ooh.
Washington ran for
Yeah.
8 touchdowns against Longview this past, or 8 touchdowns against Rockwall this
Rockwall.
past week. He might have been running against Longview in a scrimmage over this. John King did not like losing 2 at home, so he was like
No.
running. And all of a sudden, we're talking about a program that had Taylor Tatum in their program the last couple of years, and now we got Washington setting all these records for Longview. Now you got Forney, who is off of a bad loss against North Forney, but this game is at Forney, and I think that's a very consequential thing. A lot of districts, it doesn't matter where the game is at. Longview versus Forney, where does it matter? I think it matters in this district, and I think with Longview coming to Forney, I think Forney is going to win a little bit of an upset. And Ward, I think we're going to have what I call cross calibration chaos. Because
Yeah, it
now
would
once
be
you start getting
chaos.
everybody beating everybody else, you could have like a 5-way tie at 5-2. But give me the Forney Jackrabbits to be an unexpected winner in this one at home at Citibank. In fact, I would consider going to this game, but as you know, Ward, Citibank is a horrible stadium for press. Well, I know you
Yeah.
don't go up in the press box, but
No.
if you're a press box person, you don't want to be. Last time I was at Citibank, I actually walked to the other side of the field to be a part of the visitor stands because that was a more appealing destination for me. But I did. Did you see any pictures of the new North Forney Stadium this past week? That
I
looks like a
have.
nice.
Yeah, it does look good. It does look
Yeah.
really good. I
What do you
believe
think they'll
they.
be filming a game over there at
I
North
do
Forney?
believe they call it the Legend Bay Stadium, right? That's
Legend.
they
Isn't it like Better Health or something? I don't know.
better health. That is true.
But we're
What
talking
was?
about North Forney, and there
Yeah,
you are.
and there they are. They're taking on Heath. They're ready to bury Heath. I think Heath is already buried, but they're looking to get some wins here to get up in the playoff hunt as far as seeding goes, right? So, what do you think about North Forney taking on Heath? Can they just keep this momentum going? Because they've won 4 in a row now ever since Legends been out there.
Well, yeah, but you also remember the fact that there was a certain team with a little black and gold
Oh,
that
brother.
beat North Forty. So I think you have to kind of keep a good eye on North Forty. You can be happy winning four straight is nice, and the way that they beat Tyler Legacy, who just beat Rockwall Heath, should indicate that North Forty is a favorite. But as you said, Rockwall Heath, this is basically it.
Yeah.
Rockwall Heath has got to throw the kitchen sink at North Forty because if they lose this game, they're done at that point, at least as far as being a playoff team. I think they'll still play hard. That's just what a coach Rodney Webb team does. I think they're going to throw the kitchen sink at North Forney. I think it's going to be a closer game than a lot of people are expecting, but I think North Forney finds a way to win a one-score game. And who would have thought, Ward, that we're going to be based next week when we're having our shovel segment, it'll be goodbye to Rockwall Heath if they don't win this game.
I hate it when Rodney gets dirt thrown on him like that, but looks like you're calling it. So we'll
That
see what
might bury
happens.
his career too, because I think an
Uh-oh.
athletic director position may be calling his name after this.
Oh boy, my man. Does he have any insight? Do you have insight, Diggs? Or you just pulling this out?
It just might happen. Just might
All right.
happen.
Well, we'll have to see.
Maybe right there in his own backyard.
Uh
And what about
oh.
this game, Ward?
Whoa oh. Look at this that popped up. Not only is it the game of the state, it's probably the game that's been circled on from day one from every single high school football stadium in the state, from the Panhandle all the way to Corpus to anywhere. But they have 2 weeks to prepare for each other. This has, and it's back at DeSoto. They played at DeSoto last year, but that's just the way it goes in realignment. We're playing this game in DeSoto again. This has all the makings of a doozy. Tell me what you think about. I got to hear your breakdown of this one. I'm gonna get ready to start marking it because I know you're gonna say something
47
crazy.
minutes into this podcast, Ward, and we're just talking about now. We're just getting. Oh, by the way,
By
look
the
at that.
way.
We got Duncanville versus DeSoto. Are we gonna have? Is Pat Doty gonna have live 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock
He'll be
footage
there. He'll be there. He'll be there for
Big
the
game
whole game.
Friday.
Which means I won't get to see it, but he'll be there to see it. It's going to be exciting. Remember, last year, I think they were down 3 touchdowns before Duncanville's offense even got on the field because DeSoto threw all sorts of crazy.
Have we looked at the
stuff.
weather yet? Is it going to rain on Friday? Or we're going to have a big
I
game
hope not.
Saturday now all of a
God.
sudden, like we did last year.
Yeah.
Boy, when I break down this game, I look at a couple of different aspects of it. First of all, the discipline. DeSoto has kind of played that undisciplined football that we've seen, that we saw last year, but they kind of worked out of it by this time this game happened this last year. And DeSoto started getting on that roll, and they started playing downhill, started playing big against Duncanville. Duncanville can run the ball, but I think that Duncanville's strengths right now is obviously passing the ball. Keelan Russell, they're still trying to figure out some of that running game. Whereas DeSoto, and that's how DeSoto beat Duncanville last year, they just like hit them, and hit them. But I feel like even though they got big Byron Washington and a couple of really good linemen, and you got Keldon Ryan, who's a dual threat guy, there's just been something a little bit off about them. And I think North Crowley exposed that, and I think Duncanville is also going to expose it. But now that we say this, we're clipped. We're going to be on there. We're not going to be welcome back at DeSoto anymore. I know last year the voice of inside high school sports over the last couple of seasons has been widely panned as being a negative force in DeSoto. So I'll give you a chance to get back on DeSoto's good side after I ramble a little bit. But for me, I keep going with Duncanville against DeSoto. I went with them last year and I was wrong, so I reserve the right to be absolutely wrong again. But Duncanville, to me, just has too much size. And that was something I don't think I would have said going into the season. And I think the depth of their defense is superior to DeSoto right now, to where I think DeSoto is going to look lost against Duncanville at times. So I think Duncanville is going to win this game. 2 scores.
2 scores. And that's what, they're not going to clip me because I think DeSoto is going to win this game. I think that when you start telling Claude that he looks like something, you almost used the word broken. I could see that word coming out of your mouth, but you said something's a little bit off. Not broken, just some of these nuts need to be screwed a little bit in a little better.
Right, not tight. You gotta get that ratchet in there, Ward. You gotta get the
work
ratchet.
on
The
that.
screws are a little bit loose right now.
Right.
North Crowley knocked off the foundation a little bit.
It's a book of stuff that he's going to use as motivation. Obviously, coming off the North Crowley log, well, we lost to North Crowley, so nobody thinks we're going to beat Duncanville. They say we're struggling at half broken, and we're not quite there yet. What do we have to do? We beat them last year, and they're still picking against us this year. This is ridiculous. I think all that stuff plays a factor, and I think being at home, I think DeSoto's going to find a way. They're going to pull out a couple more deals like they did last year with jumping on them before the deep offense can even get out there. I think they're going to find a way to win this thing. I think Keldon Ryan's legs may pull it off because, Keelan's, he may be hurting a little bit in the legs. I know his arm's fine. He's got D1 receivers everywhere, and he's finding them everywhere. I don't know. Something about me makes me feel Duncanville still, despite losing that game, still has a little bit of complacency there and thinking that we're Duncanville. We didn't lose to North Crowley. We beat the pants off them, so we're going to be all right. And I think that's going to bite them. But we'll have to see how that works out, man.
North Crowley will be cheering for that because if DeSoto beats Duncanville, you got to make North Crowley your number 1 team in the area and probably state rank considerations.
All sorts of calibration.
What's going on in Houston with our big schools over there? While we're talking about state championship schools, I remember you thought this is the year that North Shore doesn't even win district over there. So what's going on in Houston?
I had them losing to Atascocita one day. Atascocita was up 35-7 at the half, and I had my shooter call me up saying, "Hey, I want to leave." And I said, just stick out for a little bit. And sure enough, Summer Creek came all the way back and took the lead on them, and then they lost in the last second. But I still think Atascocita has built such a resume that they're not scared of anybody. They've beaten Westlake, they've beaten Katy, they're now beaten Summer Creek. All these teams that are in state title games, they played them and beat them on the road, at home, all sorts of places. And North Shore's, they're turning the ball over 5 times against Crowley, for crying out loud. I just think this might be the year that Atascocita might beat them. They're going to play them twice. They just have
all of this.
Folsier's probably going to be Division II, so that they would have to mess around with Summer Creek in that. Folsier hadn't played a competitive game since they beat Ridgepoint. After that, their district is so bad, it's just easy peasy. I don't even know if they'll make it on our TV screen for the next 4 or 5 weeks until we get into postseason.
Burleson Centennial broke them.
They broke
gave them too much confidence.
What do you think about Richland going up to Collins Complex against this squad? Talk to me.
3 weeks ago, Ward. 3 weeks ago, I would have told you I'm picking Richland. 3 weeks ago, I would have called the upset. I would have regardless of what would have happened, I was really liking, especially the way that Richland beat and dominated Colleyville Heritage. I was on the Richland bandwagon, but the last couple of weeks, Ward, that defense has been absolutely porous. I'm just not seeing any sort of defensive consistency out of Richland, and I needed the defense that shut down Colleyville Heritage to play against Denton Ryan if you're going to win that game. Denton Ryan is offensively too talented, so Richland's going to have to go blow for blow, and I think they can for a little while, but I think Denton Ryan has just got too many athletes who can make turnovers, and I think that's going to be the big factor. I think Denton Ryan's going to win this game 14-21. I just don't feel very confident at all about Richland given the defense. I think the offense is fine. The offense has shown that they're going to be good, and Denton Ryan has shown against Northwest Eden and against Toledo that you can put up some points. A good offense can put up some points against Denton Ryan, but man, Denton Ryan just Richland can't shut Denton Ryan down. And if Richland can't get a stop, they can't win. And I don't think Richland can get a stop.
Interesting. All right, well, this is the game you should be at. It's a Country Roads game. 4-5A Division One. Have you made a decision? We don't know. Saginaw taking on Arlington Heights at Clark Stadium. A Country Roads game. I may be there. Jerome may be there. Somebody's going to be there because it's on the country roads, and this could be play a big factor in who's going to win this district title.
Well, Ward, I need a country road to take me home, right back home where I belong, in West Virginia, with Mountain Mamas. Take me home.
And if Arlington Heights wins this one, does that make the game with Pasco at the bottom end of the schedule for the title? What do you say?
I think it does, and I think it will. The Fort Worth Arlington Heights is playing at an incredibly high level right now. But then you kind of look at a couple of things because Fort Worth Arlington Heights did not dominate Saginaw Chisholm Trail the same way that Fort Worth Pasco did. So, you know, that you have a little bit of questions there. I think Saginaw has a couple of key elements. I think Saginaw is better than Chisholm Trail. So I think there's a couple of things that you can look at and go, okay, I could see where Saginaw might do something. But Arlington Heights with their run game and with their infrastructure, I think it's just a little bit better. I'm Fort Worth ISD proud. I'm Fort Worth ISD strong. Give me Arlington Heights. And I take Pasco if Pasco played Saginaw right now as well. So I'm taking those Fort Worth ISD teams. Let's go Arlington Heights.
Interesting.
And remember Kubota up in Saginaw. You know,
that
remember
is true.
them.
Don't forget them. Do not forget the Kubota. All right, talk to me about McKinney North and Frisco Reedy, because both of them, their last games were against Lebanon Trail. It looks like Reedy beat them by 22, and McKinney North put up 70 on them, beat them by 35. So is that the kind of calibration that you need to see to give you who's going to win this one or not?
I think what we know about District 5 5A Division 1 is we don't know anything about District 5 5A Division 1. I mean, we had Jackson, the ghost of Jackson Verowick, laughing at us last week as you know, Frisco was up on Lone Star for a majority of that game, and without 2 turnovers from Frisco, they probably beat Lone Star after Frisco lost to Frisco Centennial. And, you know, it's like trying to figure this district out. Lebanon Trail was down 56-14 at halftime against McKinney North, but still put up 400 yards against them as well by the end of the game. So I think in this, what I'm seeing is Frisco Reedy is much better than McKinney North. But can McKinney North find? We talked about this last week, and the answer was no, by the way. Could they get the ball out to Cameron Powell and those edge receivers? No, they just ran the ball for 400 or 500 yards against Lebanon Trail, and they're able to do that. So I think if McKinney North can't get the run game going, and I don't think they can against Frisco Reedy, because that's the strength of Frisco Reedy's defense. I think Frisco Reedy kind of wins this game going away. So I think Frisco Reedy wins a 35-14, 28-7, a 3-score kind of a win. I don't think this game is going to be competitive at all, Ward.
That does sound about right. Their defense is tight. Is this a calibration game? We want to see how Newman Smith does against White, because we saw what West Mesquite did. Put up 41 on them and didn't give up a point. Talk to me about this one. Is that why we got it on the docket here to help us see what's going to happen later in the year?
Well, I talked about Newman Smith since their running back was a big part of the fantasy football scoring that we kept going. Boy, Ward, who is just picking them out? I'm sitting here. I'm like Brett Saberhagen, and I'm pitching sidearm across the plate. I'm getting strikes. I'm hitting the home runs.
Unprovoked attacks. You give me
WT
unprovoked
White,
attacks.
speaking of unprovoked attacks, that unprovoked attack from WT White on Creekview last week and still losing that game in the fourth quarter. Again, you nailed why I'm interested in this game more, and I wanted to pick all the districts. But
Yeah,
we got two playoff teams playing each other. So I think that, WT White, Newman Smith has some defensive questions. So I think WT White can do some things against Newman Smith, but I think this is going to cement my decision to rank West Mesquite over Newman Smith, because I think this will be a competitive game, and it
yeah.
shouldn't be if Newman Smith was a top team in the district like West Mesquite was. But I think Newman Smith pulls away by 3 scores. But I think afterwards, you and I will go, yep, West Mesquite is the team to beat.
Yeah, I think so too. That's going to be a good one to see at the end. What about? Do you have a read on Burleson Centennial? I still don't have a read.
No,
All I do is sit there and think about how they're the only team to lose to Ennis, and here they are. They're 1-0. Obviously, district play just started, and they got to bye early, but they're playing 2-0 Midlothian in district play, and it's at home. I mean, how does this game make you feel? Is it a one that they can win? Or we don't even know anything about the Spartan team this
we
year.
don't know anything about this because Burleson Centennial, it's like we know the name Burleson Centennial the last couple of years. This was a
Right.
team that lost to Aledo twice in, the regular season and the fourth round of the playoffs. It's like Burleson Centennial has a bit of prestige to their name, but this year they've done nothing. They lost to Ennis, Ward, and you
Yeah.
talked about that's Ennis's win. I mean, Ennis lost to Kaufman by 3 or 4 scores, and Midlothian looks like they're figuring it out. And I feel like the benefit for them having those 2 games in district are going to offset Burleson Centennial waiting for that 2 weeks to have 2 weeks to prepare for Midlothian. In a lot of districts, the bye is a big deal, and kind of where everything is timed and who you play coming off the bye, I think, isn't important. But right here for Burleson Centennial, unless they magically got better at a lot of things in football, I think Midlothian is going to win this game pretty handily, even going to Burleson Centennial and winning the game. Because, this used to be the old triple option battle of the wishbone offenses, but Burleson Centennial has gotten away from that. He fired all those coaches and said, I don't like doing that anymore. But Midlothian is just continuing to be a machine, and I think they're winning games. And now they look like they have a couple of quality wins when you look at what they did against Tarker Heights, and the way that they way they came back and beat Joshua, and handling Cleburne. I think Midlothian should be considered a favorite. But you talk about teams with a backloaded schedule, that's Midlothian. So Midlothian's worst days are coming.
The worst days are coming. I'm sure they didn't want to hear that, but they had to hear it because they're listening. Oh, what are we thinking about is Sagen against Argyle? Sagen, boy, they gave up 240 yards to Jalen Woods. They gave up points to a team that doesn't like scoring points that much unless they're playing Everman, and ended up pulling up their first loss. Is that, and in some ways, when a team loses, it kind of wakes them up. I mean, obviously, you don't want to lose a game after week 10, but is it good to get that loss early and maybe can bounce back against Argyle? Or is that did they get exposed for some things that might Todd Rogers can exploit themselves?
Well, the problem is you don't bounce back against Argyle. Argyle is a really good
Nope.
team. And what I think Ward has been set up, and this is a bad news for 4-5A, and I think it's bad news for the teams in 3-5A, is I think you're looking at a really good chance for having a 3-way tie for second place. And at that point, then you're going to go, I think Arlington Sig, the way they match up against Colleyville Heritage, I think they're going to be a favorite against Colleyville Heritage, which then means that all 3 of those teams that beaten each other is going to come down to point differentials at that point. And you already, and Timberview's done. They won by 14 and they lost by 10. So they're +4. So they're looking good at that tiebreaker situation. It's just going to be what Colleyville Heritage and Seguin do, assuming that Colleyville Heritage loses to Seguin. But I do assume that Arlington Seguin will lose to Argyle, but I think they'll bounce back. And I think it's important for them to bounce back and get those style points in this win because Argyle is just good at football. They're good defensive line, good offensive line, good at passing, good at running. And I think Arlington Seguin, showed a little bit of weakness that I think Todd Rogers will absolutely look at in pounding the rock against them and using that to set up some of the passing game that Argyle has that Timberview doesn't, because that was basically a run-heavy game
Right.
that Timberview did did, where that infrastructure, and we knew that Timberview had the infrastructure, but now that they're using it in the right way, the defense has always been great. But even the defense didn't look great against Seguin. Seguin found some holes in that defense against Timberview, and was able to exploit this, kind of the back seven as opposed to the front seven, and found some things. Chevy and Carterius Brown and some of the good players at Seguin had some good games and had some good moments against Timberview, but they just couldn't match up on the lines. And that's just kind of the weakness of Seguin, because remember, Timberview was D1 last year, and they're coming down to D2, so they got the big numbers. They got like 2,100, and Seguin is one of the smaller schools. They got like the Colony, where they just don't match in that ISD very well. It's like, what's going on here with the Colony? What's going on here with Arlington Sig? So I think that's what's going to hurt them against Argyle, is Argyle has got that infrastructure as well. So Argyle, I think, wins the game and puts Seguin in a 2-game losing streak. But I think Seguin will be fine because I think they'll match up against Colleyville Heritage well, and I think they'll have a chance to get back up to that 2nd seed with a big enough win against Colleyville Heritage.
Gotcha. It's going to come down to the old point differential.
Point differential.
It's always fun for us mathematicians.
Start contacting people, Ward. Have your interns start getting all these tiebreakers for us.
Have your calculator meet my calculator, and we'll figure this thing out. What do you think about this old Mansfield ISD rivalry? Summit taking on Timberview. Timberview's feeling good about themselves because they put 2 in a row together, and they actually put some offense on the board in those 2 games.
And Summit's feeling good about themselves, beating up the Colony the way they did. So to me, this could potentially be, we talked about how Timberview can now get in a tiebreaker situation for 2nd place. Well, if Summit beats them, that puts them back down a rung, and then all of a sudden they're in a bad tiebreaker situation against Summit. So this is a really important game. If Timberview loses this game, this kind of could be a shovel watch game in many ways, because if Summit loses this game, they could very well be done, because they're going to have to figure out who they're going to be able to get a win over the big teams against. But they still have several of those big teams left.
Yeah, they do.
But man, when these 2 teams play, it seems like something crazy always happens. But I think Timberview has figured it out, Ward. I think they've understand that let's just run the ball. Let's just use what we're good at. Let's be big. Let's press on them. And I think Timberview will do that and continue to do that and beat Summit in a slobber knocker by a touchdown.
Yeah, I still can't even get the Summit only 3-point win over Grapevine out of my head, because nobody else has really struggled with Grapevine, and they did. So we'll see. I think I'm going to pick Timberview. Yeah, exactly. I think they shut them out, didn't they?
9-0. What a fun game that was to film.
Oh yeah, no doubt. All right, talk to me about Anna against Emerson. Emerson's hadn't played anybody in about 3 weeks. They've been blowing teams out, but now they have an Anna team where they can push Anna down to 5 and keep them down there.
Yeah, this is a absolute must win for Anna at this point, because if they lose this game, they got to beat Prosper Walnut Grove just to get in a 3-way tie and hope that, the point differential can get there. We talked about it when it happened that, it was a great win for Prosper Walnut Grove to beat Frisco Emerson, but 1 point is going to be very nefarious in point differentials. But Ward, think of every big game we've had in this district so far has been a 1-score game. We had 1, 2, 3, and 4 so far is our point differentials in all of those games. And here we go again. And again, when I'm looking at the matchups, we got Anna and their prolific offense against Emerson and their pretty good defense. But I feel like Frisco Emerson has had a chance to get a little bit more of offensive consistency playing the bad Frisco schools the last couple of weeks. We know what their defense is going to give us. I think it's going to be a close 1-score game, but give me Frisco Emerson to win this game by
Frisco Emerson.
7 points. And you know who nailed their prediction again within 2 points?
You did. This guy. The Emerson kid, they call him. Emerson, good predictions, buddy. Emerson,
I think that'll about do it for Anna. And that'll about do it for Alonzo as well.
Maybe I should put a shovel watch on that one. Hey, I'm looking forward to this one. We're actually going to have a camera here, Coffin versus Crandall, see if not only see who pulls this one out, because they're both undefeated in district, but can either one of these teams match up with Heritage and make a run for that district title?
It's just not a country roads kind of a game, by the way. I think we need to fire the producer who's figuring out these games. You got Saginaw Arlington Heights as our country roads game of the week, but here we are in Kaufman County with Kaufman and Crandall playing each other. with high profile game, you'd think Kubota would sell some tractors down there in that part of Coffin County, wouldn't you think, Ward? Wouldn't
You
you
would
think?
think. You would think him throw him a tractor or two, a riding mower.
You need to put a tractor on one of those bobblehead stands or something and give it to
That'd be pretty
yourself
sweet.
and try to hype yourself up for better days. I like Kaufman. I keep talking about it. Crandall has some pieces, but again, Crandall does not remind me of the Crandall from a couple of years ago when we were big on them and they were playing
Omosayo.
Forney and Omosayo and some of those really talented players. This is a more of a program culture team that you can kind of see how Crandall has grown as a culture and has grown as a program. But Kaufman just has way too much talent. We talked about that quarterback Ty. I can't remember his last name. I know his first name is Ty. And Kaufman, and they've been lighting it up, and I think they're going to continue to light it up against Crandall. So give me Kaufman by a touchdown, and talk while I look up his name.
All right, you can look them up while we talk about some small school action that's been going on, and we're going to be taking a look at Paris versus Aubrey in 7-4A Division One, and it also happens to be one that people like to call
Sky Burleson. There we go.
the Shovel Watch. I'm glad you guys name out there, but there's a Shovel Watch going on in small schools.
We do have a shovel watch. We talk about some crazy good districts, and I know we don't talk about 4A because you hate small schools, and you tell me, in our contract negotiations, I got to go to Plano East games, but you told me I couldn't talk an hour about small schools, and because you're just like, that, like you pulled me over and said, Diggs, small schools don't sell ads. They just don't. We can't have we can't have real estate ads, real estate agents on here because they don't care about us. Or we need big like Whataburger and Kroger, and we need big names. We can't have this, the Ebby Holiday, kind of things that you get in these small schools. And I just slapped you around, Ward. I said, Ward, shut up with that blasphemy. What's wrong with you? You got to understand that the real estate agents in small towns are the hearts of our programs, of the hearts of our podcast. They watch this podcast, Ward. What's wrong with you? But 7-4A, and then you're just like, this conversation never happened. Diggs is having a dream sequence again. Diggs is having another dream sequence like he did against the Alito Denton Ryan dream sequence as of last week. But this is a shovel watch. We got 6 really good teams, and man, Nevada community, shout out to them because they are the odd team out in this 7-team district. That's everybody's warm up. There are a lot of homecoming games that are associated with Nevada community. But loser of this game is not going to make playoffs.
I've seen a lot of crowns, but none of them have been district crowns. They're all crowns.
They haven't not seen any district crowns. And Nevada community, they're like my heart team. I might adopt them one year. They're just right down the road, Ward. You just go right up 78 here, and you get to Nevada. Go a little past Taco Delight, like we had our dinner date this past night. Got to keep going over there. You get through Lavon, and that's part of the community. Once you're in Lavon, you're in the community. Then you get over to Nevada and Josephine, and you're right in the heart of Nevada community. But we're not talking about Nevada.
No, we're not.
Right
let's talk about
it's
this
like
game.
that song what is that, Alice's Restaurant, where he's like, we're not talking about the all that stuff. We're talking about the Vietnam War or whatever.
Exactly.
But Paris played Panther Creek within a field goal. Panther Creek is one of those teams that all of a sudden we're looking at them like, what's going on at Panther Creek? And to me, I think a lot of that is the quarterback situation over there. It's just not, obviously what they had last year was a special thing. And I think, quarterback play at the 4A level is so important, especially if you're going to run that kind of offense where you got to sling it out there. And he's a good quarterback. I'm not saying anything bad about him, but I just feel like that's been a big difference in that game. But Paris was able to go score for score with Panther Creek. I think Paris is going to beat up on Aubrey. I think Paris is going to win this game by 3 scores.
3 scores. All right. Well, I'm with you on that. I think Aubrey.
That
means Aubrey gets the shovel in a tamale.
Aubrey gets the shovel. They're done. My favorite part of the week, Ward. I've been waiting all day for Sunday night.
It didn't used to be this, but it is now because if we look at the scoreboard. Oh my God, that's a 400-point loss. Your boy doesn't know what he's doing picking players. They always come through for me right in front of me, but when it comes down to the other two guys, they don't really come through, and you seem to be able to double down like we talked about the Richland players. You doubled down. They
Is
got
that our
you.
all-time high score, by the way? Is
It
that
is the all-time high.
757?
Yep, we only hit 690 before, and you did that last week, so it's looking
I
ugly
got to
for
get
me.
800 on us at some point, Ward. We got to push up. We got to
Oh
push the
my
bar up
gosh.
here.
Yeah, you got to
We
do
need
push-ups for every one of
800.
those. The only reason I'm not doing well is because we've agreed to do push-ups for every point we got, and I can do 373, but I can't do no 757. He got them airplane numbers. All right,
Airplane number.
he's up 4-2, and I'm 2-4. But let's see who we got going on this week. Talk to me about your quarterback pick. You're going to Prosper.
I want to prosper because I'm as a Plano East guy, we got to just throw it on Plano. And one thing I've kind of seen as kind of a Prosper personality trait that I don't necessarily like, but I've kind of observed it, is they like to try to play bully ball real early. Like like I saw them against Plano East, they're doing onside kicks. Like, you're better than Plano. Why are you doing onside? It's like
Right.
they want to get you down and beat you up early and get the reserves out there real quick. So I think that since Plano has enough to push back a little bit and punch back, I think they're going to have to punch a little bit harder. And who do you need to punch other than Braden Imhoff? I feel like they're going to get a chance to air it out a little bit and get it out to their weapons. So I think Braden Imhoff's going to give me a good 300 yards. I think he's going to take care of me.
300. God bless her. They're going to run the ball with those two running backs they got. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, you would think with Prosper, it's kind of like Louisville last year, just stick behind that. But no, it's that insecurity complex. It's like we gotta do something else. You think we're gonna run, so we gotta pass. We gotta force it. It doesn't always work, but it's
Well,
Prosper's personality.
let's see how it works at Choctaw for me. Right? You're talking about 300 with the passing game. I'm talking about 350 with passing and running. With Larry Nichols, I need him to take off a couple of times, get me like 89, 80, 90 yards there, and then throw for 250 and try to keep me ahead of this character out of Prosper. I just got to have some sort of lead somewhere, and this is where it's going to happen. That game, even though it was 2019 a year ago, you say it's going to be a nice little. We're going to see some points scored. I have a feeling.
Could be a hey good pick. Wizzy could be hey good pick.
A hey good pick. Well, I'll hope so. Oh man, you're biting off the guy from last week. I like this strategy. You see him get 260, he's or 230, whatever it was. He's got to get you at least 180 this week, and it kept playing against that Summit squad. Is that what you're thinking with Jalen Woods?
And I think that Timberview, now that they found that offensive consistency, and this is kind of they're starting to find their identity in this, they got to feed him 25 to 30 times. And if you feed him 25 to 30 times behind that offensive line, it's going to get me 200 yards too. So I think Summit's strength is not their defense. I think Summit, the way they played against the Colony, it was their offense that kind of looked good against the Colony. I don't think they're going to be able to match up against Timberview's infrastructure. So I think Jalen Woods is going to go off again. 2 straight weeks for me.
2 straight weeks he's going to go. You're going to have another big-time running back. Well, I have a big-time running back. Well, I'm going up to Walnut Grove, who I haven't messed with all that much. And they're playing Frisco Liberty, so they're going to back off the quarterback deal here, and they're going to hand it to Cam for a while, and hopefully he'll get me 160 in the first half before he needs to shut it down. I'm looking for big runs. I really wish I could pick Houston guys. There's this kid from straight Jesuit that had a 90, 80, and 70-yard touchdown run along with 4 other ones, and that would have beat your thing just by himself. But we don't pick Houston guys.
Are you not playing this game with Step?
No.
Don't you have like this? Don't you have a doppelganger podcast where you do exactly like this, except you have Step here in this image, and he's like, and he talks like I do, where he's like, that quarterback over there at Straight Jesuit, that's a horrible decision over there. Why are we starting him over at Straight Jesuit? And I bet because he gets the big bucks, y'all like all talking private schools, y'all are talking like First Baptist and stuff over there.
The day he talks church ball is the day I do backflips. I actually do the 357 push-ups I told you I was going to do. Our wide receiver this week. Talk to me. Oh, there's Darren's gone, and there it is. Life Oak Cliff. How about this? I like it. Tell me about this kid.
Well, Demarion Mays
Tell me about Demarion Bird.
got about 200 yards a game for like the last 4 games. I mean, he is the target for Live Oak Cliff, and they're playing games where they're getting beat up pretty bad, and all of a sudden they're having to throw the ball around to stay in the game. This week, I think they're in a very favorable matchup, so I think he's going to explode. I could see him, Ward, going for 3 bills.
Three
bills this week.
Oh
Demarion Mays from Live Oak Cliff. We're going small school on you, but he is going to take care of business. I almost went with their quarterback as well, but I almost double dipped as well. I should have probably in retrospect. I like to save a little something because you still got Casa Grande and you still got Presley Harper in your back pocket to go. So I gotta keep something in my back pocket for the end of the year.
I could double down at some point, but I like to mix it up a little bit. They tell me big guys make big plays in big games, so that's what I'm going for with my wide receiver pick if the button would work, which it doesn't seem to want to do. But I am picking it's DeCorian Moore I'm picking from Duncanville.
Okay.
There he is. It took a while for the button deal to work. Change the batteries in your mouse, Withy. This is a production. But that I feel like he's going to get 3 scores. Now, obviously, scores mean nothing in this thing. It's all about yardage, but I still think those comes with the yards. I think he's going to break free for a couple of those 70, 80-yard runs on the screen pass and use that speed. He's a good roller skater, too. You didn't know that, did you? He's a big-time roller skater, too. So put them skates on and take off. Man, I sure hope it does something for me because you're looking like you're having yet another 800 point week, or not another 800-point week. Who knows?
But yet you're picking DeSoto to win. I'm going to give you a chance to change your mind.
I'm not changing my mind. I'm picking DeSoto to win.
He's going to get 3 touchdowns. He's going to get 240 yards for you. But
you know how it's going to be. It's 49-41, something like that. You know how those games are. It's going to be sweet. Pat Doney will be there. All that won't even see none of it. Dang it, Pat. Why do you always?
Big Friday night broadcast.
Why can't he take Rowlett against Garland, Lakeview, Centennial? No, he can't take those kind of games. He takes the big dogs. Typical Pat. All right, brother.
That's why we're here without our green screens and production values.
Yeah, exactly.
And
he's bobbleheads and whatever.
He's like going to the World Series and like, I'm not covering a World Series team. But I'm going to go to the World Series because I'm Pat Doney. So I can get into that thing.
He does what we does. All right. After this week, we only got 4 left. Talk to me, Diggs. I'm not going to see you next week. Wait, you're heading to... Have you confirmed where you're heading or not? You're still thinking about Friday.
Thursday night, I'm going to go to Sagen on Arlington Nights. I'm
right.
going to go check out the country roads. Somebody's got to keep Jerome in check if it's Jerome because that guy is just crazy. Like you put him unsupervised, and you never know what's going to happen.
Exactly.
So I'm here to make sure Jerome is going to be an appropriate member of Game Day Productions. But Friday, I'm open-minded, Ward. I'm open.
All right, he's taking bids. Let's open up the mailbag. Everybody, send him some mail and let him know where you want him to go.
Up the mailbag. There was a question for me on the YouTube.
What you got?
The YouTube feed.
Tell me.
So I feel like I have to answer it. It was like, where can I read the dump?
All right.
So Ward, get in your best announcer voice and let that individual know where they can see the dump.
Well, the dump is every Friday night at 12 a.m. as Professor Diggs gives you all the knowledge he has from 12 till he gets tired and goes to sleep. He'll break down every district. It's on Inside High School Sports Twitter, and it's on Professor Diggs' Twitter, and you'll love it. And he'll fall asleep at like 1:15. Not really. He'll be done at 1:15, and then he'll stay up till 4 a.m. He doesn't care, and I'm tired of talking like this. All right, Diggs, there it is. That was decent, wasn't it?
That was good.
All right, brother. We will talk to you next week.
Absolute DFW, digging for wisdom.
Have a good one.